Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. This is obviously a very sad day for me being a huge Rolling Stones fan. As you know, Charlie Watts was announced today that Charlie Watts, the drummer of the Rolling Stones, approaching 60 years, died today at the age of 80. Very sad day. When they talk about the greatest drummers in the history of rock and roll, most people are going to think of progressive rock drummers, things like people like Neil Peart, Bill Bruford, Mike Portnoy, Steve Gadd, these amazing technical drummers. And a lot of people won't think of Charlie Watts in that aspect. But Charlie Watts is a pretty amazing, special drummer. There's a reason why the Rolling Stones are the greatest rock and roll band of all time, having a huge, amazing discography. But one thing that the Stones do that really no other band does is they can play any kind of music and do play any kind of music, and it still comes through that filter of sounding like the Rolling Stones. And that comes from the engine room, Charlie Watts and the bass player Bill Wyman or whoever was playing bass. The Stones can play hard driving rock and roll, but they do the most beautiful ballads and blues and funk and soul and they swing, but it always still has that Stone sound. And you got to be a pretty spectacular drummer to be able to pull that off. Charlie Watts plays a small set, a four-piece Gresh set, um, but like Keith Richards used to say, the Stones don't really rock, they roll, they swing, and that comes from the way that Charlie Watts plays. And if you just want to get a sample, you know, listen to what Charlie Watts does, like on an amazing ballad like Angie, a number one hit from Goat's Head Soup. Go put on Angie when you're done with me. It is one of the most beautiful ballads. It's lush, orchestral, beautiful piano from Nicky Hopkins. But listen to how Charlie Watts plays the drum on Angie. There's Angie, he does these little fills, this little hi hat thing. Is it technically difficult? No. But do you have to be a musical genius to think of that and do that? Yeah. Charlie Watts does that through his whole career, whether it's Ruby Tuesday and doing little fills on the toms, or Get Off of My Cloud, where, hey, the little fills, or Brown Sugar, where he plays it on the floor tom, doesn't even go to a crash. Anybody else would go to a crash, but, the way that the band gels together, the uniqueness. Listen to like Tumbling Dice, a really classic, definitive Stone sound. When Charlie Watts played the drums, he did this little thing that is kind of unique. When he plays on the hi hat and he hits the snare, he doesn't play down on the hi hat. He goes like this. Now you'd be like, so what? And is it technically difficult? No, but it creates this push and pull, almost struggle that's very unique to the Stones. When so he's playing behind Keith Richards and he's not playing the hi hat when he hits the snare, and it creates this feeling that there's this microsecond delay, and it creates this magic where the Stones almost sound like they're going to fall apart, but they don't fall apart. It's this magical quality that the Stones have, and that comes from Charlie's playing. Again, is it technically difficult? No. But is it amazing? Yeah. Just like Ringo Starr is not a great technical drummer, but what he played with the Beatles fits perfectly. And the Stones as musicians, none of them are like the greatest musicians in the world, but when they play together, the sum is so much greater than the parts. And Charlie Watts is just an amazing drummer, and this is such a sad loss. I'm devastated. And Charlie's love, he was a swing jazz drummer. So even beyond the Stones, out of the love of music, he's released a bunch of solo records. His first one was From Charlie, about a tribute to Charlie Parker. And here's another one, the tribute to Charlie Parker with strings, the Charlie Watts Quintet. And Warm and Tender. Also, this is like, jazzy, but it's also like, Bewitched and My Foolish Heart and Someone to Watch Over Me with Bernard Fowler singing. Long Ago and Far Away, Charlie Watts. he did this music because he loved it. He probably lost money doing these things, but he's such a love of jazz and swing and the Stones. Here's one he did, the Charlie Watts Jim Keltner project. Jim Keltner, obviously a phenomenal drummer. Um, More, the Charlie Watts Orchestra live at Fulham Town Hall. And the first one he was involved with, Rocket 88, with their old piano player, Ian Stewart. Um, these are fine records, not like the Rolling Stones. They don't sound anything like the Rolling Stones. But Charlie Watts was not a rock star, and that's why people loved him so much. He was the drummer in the greatest rock and roll band in the world that will ever be. But he never understood why anybody would want to talk to him. He was so humble and so modest. And you listen to his interviews, and it was so funny. But like, why would you want to talk to me? I'm just a drummer in a rock band. Oh, Mick, yeah, I just saw him taking a piss. Oh, Keith was just taking a shit. You know, they're just people. He never would consider himself a rock star, although he was obviously very wealthy, but an eccentric, Englishman who loved to dress up in the finest clothes and had very high taste in expensive cars, but never got a driver's license, didn't know how to drive, and his cars would just sit in his front because he loved the machinery. Just an interesting guy, but so humble. And when you used to see the Stones live, certainly over the last couple of decades, when they would announce the band, who got the loudest ovation was always Charlie. And I don't know who started it, but it was always fun when you saw the Stones live and the crowd they would do this thing, they would yell, Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. He got much bigger ovations than Keith Richards or Mick Jagger because you love somebody who's modest and humble, who's just a drummer in the greatest rock and roll band that ever was. I'm so upset and I'm so devastated, and we're at that age where this is now going to happen, and it's been happening. But this is the death of a Rolling Stone, and obviously Brian Jones died in 1969, but he was already out of the band, and I was only 6. And the only one that died was Ian Stewart, who was a piano player. But Charlie Watts is, full-fledged member of the Stones, an integral part of the Stones machine. And you got to figure this is really the end. So it's just a really sad day, and I just wanted to speak some words as I take this in like the rest of the world. So, go listen to Get Your Yayas Out. There's Charlie on the cover. Great cover. And go play Get Your Yayas Out, a live album where before Honky Tonk Woman, Mick Jagger says, Charlie's good tonight, ain't he? Yeah, Charlie's good tonight. Charlie was always good tonight. Just really sad. So go listen to some Stones, the greatest band ever. What will they do now? Well, they were supposed to do this upcoming tour with COVID. Who knows if it'll even happen? Listen, the band really stopped being a creative unit. I mean, A Bigger Bank was 2000. When was this thing? 2005, or is that what this was? I can't even read it. It was a long time ago. And then 2016 was Blue and Lonesome, which really doesn't count because it was a covers album. So the band hasn't put out an album of original material in a really long time. Clearly, it's not a focus of them anymore. If they wanted my opinion, what I think that they should do is they should do this tour if they can with COVID with Steve Jordan. Is a great solution. He plays with Keith, the Expensive Winos. He's a great drummer, and he can play in Charlie's style. And they should go out and do this tour. One of the things that the Stones have never done, which I always thought was great, was they've never done a farewell tour. The Who, I love the Who, but they've done a farewell tour so many times that it's ridiculous. We're never going to play again until next year. And Elton John, and you can think of a million bands that have done farewell tours, and they swear up and down they're never going to play again, and then they just do Kiss. There's a million of them. The Stones never played on that. 60-year-old band, and they never, ever did a farewell tour. But they deserve one now. So if Mick and Keith saw this video, what I think you should do is do this tour with Steve Jordan. Make it a bigger tour. Play New York. And do it as an official farewell tour and go out with a big bang as a memorial to Charlie, and go out on a high road then break up the band, and let's live out the legacy of the greatest rock and roll band that ever was and will ever be, the Rolling Stones. Charlie, 80 years old, I'm imagining had an amazing life, married to one woman, one daughter. But as a Stones fan, this is so heartbreaking. So God bless you. I hope you are in heaven where you deserve to be. Long live the music of the Rolling Stones. And thank you for tuning in to this tribute to Charlie Watts. Have a great night.